I'm telling you, that night at Harper Manor felt like something out of a movie, but the kind where you're gripping the armrest, knowing the hero's about to get kicked down before they rise. Picture this: Fairfax, Virginia, summer of 2025, the kind of humid evening where the air sticks to your skin. Harper Manor's lit up like a Christmas tree, all chandeliers and champagne flutes, the kind of place where the rich folks of Virginia come to pat each other's backs. I'm talking about Charles Harper's annual gala, where the guest list reads like a who's who of real estate moguls and local politicians. The infinity pool sparkles under fairy lights, reflecting the smug smiles of people who've never known a hard day. And there's Marcus Jackson, 16 years old, black, wiry, in a faded hoodie that's seen better days, hovering near the pool house, helping his mom, Diane, who's been scrubbing this place clean for a decade. Diane's the kind of woman who keeps her head down, works her fingers raw to keep their tiny Alexandria apartment afloat. Marcus, he's got her work ethic, but a spark in his eyes that says he sees things nobody else does. I swear, I thought it was just another night of blending into the background for Marcus. He's used to it, being invisible to these folks, just the janitor's kid who shouldn't be seen. But then, everything changed in a heartbeat. Emily Harper, Charles's 14-year-old daughter, is out there on her motorized pool float. She's got spinal muscular atrophy, so that float's her ticket to feeling free in the water, her smile brighter than the lights above. I'd seen Marcus and Emily talk before, quiet moments when he'd help her with algebra while Diane mopped the floors. They're friends, the kind who don't care about the worlds between them. But that night, the float jams. One second, Emily's laughing, the next, it tips and she's under, her arms flailing, water swallowing her like it's hungry. The music's blaring, but the crowd freezes, their champagne glasses mid-air. "Somebody do something," a woman in a sequined dress yells, but her heels stay glued to the deck. It's like they're all statues, too scared or too entitled to move. Marcus doesn't hesitate. He sprints from the shadows, kicks off his sneakers, and dives in, cutting through the water like he's been training for this his whole life. His strokes are fierce, desperate, pulling him to Emily's side. He yanks her free from the sinking float, her gasps sharp as he hauls her to the surface. I can't explain the sound of that moment, the splash, her coughs, the crowd's stunned murmurs, but it hit like a thunderclap. Marcus holds her steady, swimming to the edge, where a few guests finally snap out of it and help lift her out. Emily's shaking, clinging to Marcus's arm, her voice barely a whisper. "You saved me, Marcus. Thank you." Her eyes are wide, grateful, like he's her lifeline. For a second, I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this kid's about to get the hero's welcome he deserves. Then Charles Harper storms through the crowd, all 6'2" of him, his face red as a Virginia sunset. I figured he'd be grateful, right? His daughter's alive because of Marcus? But no. "Who the hell let you near my pool, boy?" he barks, the word boy slicing through the air like a blade. The crowd shifts, some nodding like they agree Marcus doesn't belong. My stomach turned just watching it. Marcus, still dripping wet, meets Charles's glare, his face calm but his eyes burning with something deep, something that says he's heard this before. "I was saving your daughter, sir," he says, voice steady as steel. Emily tries to speak up. "Dad, he's my friend. He saved my life." But Charles cuts her off, sharp as a whip. "Quiet, Emily. That damn chair's defective. And you," he jabs a finger at Marcus, "you don't belong here. Get out before I call security." I couldn't believe it. Diane rushes over, her apron still tied, her voice trembling. "Mr. Harper, please, he was just helping." Charles doesn't even look at her. "You're done, Diane. Both of you, out." The guests whisper, some with pity, others with that smug look of folks who think they're above it all. Marcus's jaw tightens, but he doesn't flinch. As he grabs his sneakers, he glances at Charles's wrist, where a flashy smartwatch blinks, syncing to the Manor's Wi-Fi. I swear, the tiniest smirk flickers across Marcus's face, gone so fast you'd miss it if you blinked. It's not anger, it's something sharper, like he's already 3 steps ahead. Diane's pulling him toward the gate, her eyes wet with fear. But Marcus walks tall, like he's carrying a secret bigger than this whole damn mansion. What I didn't expect was the old man in the corner, a groundskeeper named Joe, who'd been tending the Harper Gardens since Charles was a kid. He catches Marcus's eye as they pass, slipping him a crumpled note. "You did good, kid," Joe mutters, his voice rough but kind. Marcus tucks the note away, not reading it yet, but I could tell it meant something. That note, that moment, it was like a spark in the dart, a hint that Marcus wasn't as alone as Charles thought. I'm telling you, that night wasn't just about a kid saving a girl. It was the start of something bigger, something that made Charles Harper wish he'd never opened his mouth. Look, after that night at Harper Manor, you'd think Marcus Jackson would be licking his wounds, head down, just trying to move on. I mean, getting chewed out by Charles Harper in front of Fairfax's high society, called boy like it's 1950, and watching his mom, Diane, lose her job for his heroics, most 16-year-olds would have crumbled. But Marcus? Man, he's built different. I'm telling you, sitting in their cramped Alexandria apartment with the hum of a busted AC unit and the faint smell of bleach from Diane's cleaning supplies, Marcus wasn't sulking, he was plotting. His eyes had this fire, not the angry kind, but the kind that says, "You messed with the wrong kid." Diane was a wreck, pacing the tiny kitchen, her hands still calloused from years of scrubbing Harper's marble floors. "Marcus, Charles Harper's got half of Virginia in his pocket," she said, her voice tight, like she was holding back a scream. "He can make sure we never work in this town again." Marcus just nodded, his fingers already flying over a beat-up laptop he'd pieced together from junkyard parts. "He thinks he knows who I am, Mom," he said, not even looking up. "That's where he's wrong." I swear, it was like watching someone flip a switch from victim to strategist, and it gave me chills. Marcus had been teaching himself to code since he was 12, sneaking into free online courses after Diane went to bed. That laptop of his, it was his lifeline, a Frankenstein of discarded tech he'd turned into a weapon. Back at Fairfax High, things weren't much better. The story of the pool incident had spread, twisted by kids who thought it was funny to call him Pool Boy or leave wet towels on his locker. "Hero turns zero, huh?" one jock sneered during lunch, loud enough for the whole cafeteria to hear. Marcus just kept eating his sandwich, but I could see his jaw tighten, like he was swallowing every insult and storing it for fuel. His AP computer science teacher, Ms. Laura Bennett, was the only one who saw past the noise. She'd been a cybersecurity hotshot before budget cuts sent her to teaching, and she clocked Marcus's talent the second he debugged a classmate's code in 10 seconds flat. "You're thinking like a pro, Marcus," she said after class, her eyes narrowing like she knew he was up to something. "Ever thought about ethical hacking? Taking down the bad guys from behind a screen?" That hit him like a spark to gasoline. I could almost see the gears turning in his head, connecting Charles's smartwatch from the gala to the whispers he'd heard from Emily. Emily Harper, stuck in that gilded cage of a mansion, was Marcus's secret weapon. Charles had her on lockdown. No pool, no phone, just a nurse watching her every move like she was a prisoner, not a daughter. But Emily wasn't just some damsel. She'd been friends with Marcus for years, trading math problems and bad jokes while Diane cleaned. Using a burner phone she'd hidden under her wheelchair's cushion, she texted Marcus through an encrypted app he'd coded for her. "Dad's been on edge," she wrote, her words popping up on Marcus's screen at 1 a.m. "He's got these late-night calls in his study, talking about offshore deals and keeping the books clean. It's sketchy, Marcus." That was the kind of tip that made Marcus's heart race, not out of fear, but excitement. He started digging into Harper Enterprises' public records, pulling tax filings and property deeds from county databases. Most kids his age were scrolling TikTok. Marcus was cross-referencing financials like a detective. Then came the breakthrough.
That smartwatch Charles wore? It was linked to the Manor's guest Wi-Fi, a sloppy setup with zero encryption. Marcus hacked it in a night, pulling fragments of emails about underpaying workers on Harper's construction sites. "Jackpot," he muttered, his screen glowing in the dark. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. At school, things got uglier. That same jock, Tyler, cornered Marcus in the hall, shoving his laptop to the floor. The screen cracked, and for a second I thought Marcus might lose it. Instead, he picked it up, dusted it off, and said, real quiet, "You're gonna regret that." Tyler laughed, but there was something in Marcus's voice, cold, certain, that shut him up. Miss Bennett saw the whole thing and pulled Marcus aside. "You're fighting a war most people don't see," she said, handing him her old laptop from her desk drawer. "Use this, and be careful." That gesture hit Marcus hard. He wasn't used to people believing in him, not like that. Then there was Joe, the groundskeeper from the gala, who slipped Marcus a note that night. When Marcus finally read it, it was just a scribbled phone number and the words, "I know Harper's dirt, call me." Joe had been at the Manor since Charles was a kid, and he'd seen things. Shady deals, workers stiffed on pay, corners cut. I'm telling you, that note was like a lifeline, proof Marcus wasn't alone in this fight. Diane caught him at 3 a.m., the laptop's glow painting his face blue. "Marcus, you're playing with fire," she said, her voice cracking. She wasn't just scared for their future, she was scared for him, her only kid, the one who'd been taking apart radio since he was 6, asking why the world worked the way it did. Marcus looked up, his eyes steady. "Mom, you remember how Dad fought for our old house? Bank laughed in his face, said a black man like him couldn't afford it. He proved him wrong, brick by brick. I'm doing the same." Diane's breath caught, and for a second I thought she'd cry. Instead, she nodded, like she saw her late husband's fight in her son. Marcus turned back to the screen, his fingers moving faster now, chasing a lead on a secret deal Charles was hiding. At a school media fair, he met Sarah Coleman, a local journalist with a nose for corruption. She'd written about Fairfax's elite before and got blackballed for it. "You got proof Harper's dirty?" she asked, leaning in, her voice low. Marcus hesitated, then slid her a USB with public records he'd compiled. "It's a start," he said. Sarah's eyes lit up like she'd just found gold. "I'm telling you, right then, I knew Marcus was building something bigger than revenge. He was building a reckoning, and Charles Harper had no idea what was coming."
Man, if you thought Marcus Jackson was just going to sit back and take it after Charles Harper kicked him and his mom to the curb, you don't know this kid. I'm telling you, what happened next was the kind of moment that makes your jaw drop, like watching a plot twist in real life. It's a few weeks after that humiliating night at Harper Manor, and Marcus has been burned in the midnight oil, his cracked laptop humming like it's alive, pulling secrets from Harper Enterprises servers that make your head spin. This wasn't just some teenager messing around. This was a 16-year-old black kid from Alexandria, Virginia, playing chess while Charles thought it was checkers. Marcus had cracked that unsecured smartwatch signal, sifting through emails and audio clips where Charles bragged about dodging taxes and stiffing workers on his construction sites. "Keep the books clean, boys," Charles's voice sneered in one recording, like he was untouchable. Marcus wasn't just collecting evidence, he was building a guillotine, and I swear, you could feel the air getting heavy with what was coming. Marcus knew he couldn't take Charles down alone, so he looped in Sarah Coleman, that journalist he met at the school media fair. Sarah had a fire in her gut from years of being sidelined for calling out Fairfax's elite. When Marcus slid her that USB with his findings, emails, payroll scams, even a shady offshore account, she looked at him like he'd handed her the scoop of a lifetime. "Kid, you're either a genius or insane," she said, her voice half laughing, half awestruck. "Maybe both," Marcus shot back, his smirk hiding the nerves eating at him. They spent hours at a diner, the kind with sticky tables and bottomless coffee, mapping out their move. Sarah had a contact at the Washington Post, and by dawn, they'd sent an anonymous package that'd make Charles wish he'd never met Marcus Jackson. I'm telling you, when that article hit, front page screaming Virginia tycoons fraud exposed, it was like a bomb went off. Social media lit up, hashtags like #HarperFraud trending nationwide, with protesters swarming Harper Enterprises' glassy headquarters. Fairfax's elite were shook, whispering in their country clubs, while workers Charles had cheated started sharing their stories online. It was chaos, and Marcus was the quiet storm at the center. But the real fireworks? They happened at Charles's next gala, a desperate attempt to save face. Picture Harper Manor decked out again, chandeliers gleaming, Charles in a tailored suit, toasting investors like nothing's wrong. Marcus wasn't supposed to be there, banned, remember? But Emily, that fierce 14-year-old in her wheelchair, wasn't playing by her dad's rules anymore. She'd slipped Marcus an invite through that encrypted app he built, along with something bigger, access codes to Charles's private study, nabbed from his desk during one of her supervised therapy sessions. "He's not my dad right now," she texted Marcus, her words raw with betrayal. "He's a liar." Marcus showed up, blending into the catering staff, his borrowed black vest a perfect disguise. Sarah was there too, her press badge hiding a tiny recorder clipped to her purse. Charles was mid-speech, all fake charm about community values, when Marcus stepped forward, cool as ice, and plugged a USB into the gala's projector system. The screen behind Charles flickered, then lit up with his own emails, line after line of tax evasion plans, worker exploitation, and that damning audio. "Screw the IRS, and screw those lowlifes building my projects." The crowd gasped, glasses clinking as hands froze. Charles's face went white, then red, like he was choking on his own lies. "You little punk!" Charles roared, lunging toward Marcus, but security grabbed him first. Marcus didn't flinch. "You said I didn't belong here, Mr. Harper," he said, his voice low but carrying like a gunshot. "Guess you didn't belong cheating people either." Then came the twist nobody saw coming. Emily rolled forward, her wheelchair cutting through the stunned crowd. "I gave him the codes, Dad," she said, her voice shaking but steady, eyes locked on Charles. "You lied to everyone, me, Mom, all of us." The room went dead silent, like the air had been sucked out. Charles's jaw dropped, betrayal hitting him harder than the evidence. I'm telling you, that moment, Emily turning on her own father, Marcus standing tall, was pure electricity. Sarah's recorder caught it all, her live feed to her post-contact, streaming the confrontation to thousands online. By the time Charles's lawyer started stammering about slander, FBI agents were already at the gate, badges flashing under the fairy lights. Marcus handed Sarah another USB, this one with backups of every file, and said, "You underestimated the wrong kid." Charles was speechless, his empire crumbling in real time as the crowd stared, some in horror, others in awe. What got me was Marcus's face. Not smug, not angry, just calm, like he'd known this moment was coming since Charles called him boy. Emily's hands trembled on her wheelchair, but her chin was up, like she'd reclaimed a piece of herself. Sarah, scribbling notes, looked at Marcus with something like respect, maybe even pride. And Charles? He was a man watching his world burn, realizing too late he'd picked a fight with someone smarter than him. I'm telling you, that gala wasn't just a party. It was the night Marcus Jackson turned the tables, and nobody in Fairfax, or hell, half of Virginia, would ever forget it.
I'm telling you, after that gala showdown, Fairfax, Virginia felt like it got hit by a freight train, and Marcus Jackson was the one driving it. That night when Marcus dropped the bomb on Charles Harper, exposing his tax evasion and worker exploitation right there on the big screen, it wasn't just a gotcha moment. It was like the whole town took a hard look in the mirror. Charles's empire was crumbling faster than a sandcastle at high tide. The feds swooped in, cuffing him as his guests gawked, their champagne forgotten. By morning, Harper Enterprises' accounts were frozen, and the Washington Post was running follow-ups about Charles facing a laundry list of charges, tax fraud, labor violations, you name it. I swear, watching Charles's smug grin vanish was like seeing a bully get knocked out cold. But what really got me was how Marcus, this 16-year-old kid who'd been called boy and kicked out, didn't just walk away. He turned that pain into something bigger, something that changed lives, including his own. Charles was staring down years in a federal pen, his fancy suit swapped for an orange jumpsuit. The guy who thought he owned Fairfax was now a headline, and not the good kind. His wife Ellen filed for divorce before the trial even started, saying she'd been blind to the man he'd become. I could feel her shame, like she was waking up from a bad dream, realizing the life she'd built was propped up on lies. Emily, their daughter, was the real heartbreaker, though. That 14-year-old, stuck in her wheelchair, had been Charles's excuse for control, protecting her, he'd claimed, while locking her away from the world. After the gala, social services stepped in, and Emily moved in with her Aunt Clara, a no-nonsense school counselor in Richmond who'd always seen through Charles's act. Clara gave Emily what her dad never did: freedom. I'm talking adaptive swimming classes at the community center, where Emily started training again, her strokes stronger each week. She'd call Marcus on FaceTime, her face lit up, saying, "You didn't just pull me out of that pool, Marcus. You pulled me out of his cage." Marcus would just nod, that quiet smile of his hiding how much her words meant. He wasn't chasing applause. He was chasing change.
Marcus's life, it flipped upside down in the best way. That dossier he gave Sarah Coleman didn't just take down Charles, it caught the eye of Georgetown University. They offered him a full ride for computer science, calling his work a masterclass in ethical hacking. I mean, come on, a kid from Alexandria's projects getting a golden ticket to Georgetown? That's the kind of thing that makes you believe in second chances. But Marcus wasn't just thinking about himself. He'd sit with Diane in their apartment, now cluttered with moving boxes as she planned something new. Diane, who'd spent a decade cleaning Harper's floors, took the settlement money from a class-action lawsuit against Charles, filed by workers he'd cheated, and started a cleaning cooperative. She hired folks like her, single moms and immigrants, paying them fair wages with benefits. "Marcus taught me we don't just take what's handed to us," she'd say, her voice thick with pride. I could see her standing taller, like she was reclaiming the years Charles stole. Fairfax itself started to shift, and I'm not kidding when I say Marcus lit the spark. At a town hall, packed with folks who'd once sipped Charles's wine, a local contractor named Tom Reed stood up. He'd been one of Charles's buddies, always at those galas, but now he looked like he'd aged a decade. "We judged Marcus by his skin and his mom's job," he said, his voice cracking. "We were dead wrong." Tom pledged to hire fairly, starting with Diane's cooperative, and the crowd clapped, some tearfully. It wasn't just talk. Fairfax launched community workshops on workplace equity, and the high school named a coding club after Marcus, led by Miss Laura Bennett. She'd been his rock, loaning him that laptop when his got smashed, and now she was teaching kids to code like him. Sarah Coleman, meanwhile, was on fire. Her Post articles earned her a Pulitzer nomination, and she started a journalism boot camp for teens, calling Marcus her secret weapon.
I saw her at a coffee shop once, showing a kid how to fact-check, saying, "Marcus proved the truth can hit harder than any fist." What really hit home was a moment at the community center where Marcus and Emily met up after her swim practice. Emily was working on an app for disabled athletes, something to track their progress, and she wanted Marcus's help coding it. "You gave me courage to be more than my chair," she said, her eyes fierce. Marcus leaned in, his voice soft. "We gave it to each other, Em. You're the one who got me those codes." That was the thing. Emily wasn't just a victim. She'd risked everything to help Marcus, sneaking those study codes past her dad's nose. Their friendship, built on years of stolen moments over math homework, was now a partnership, a quiet rebellion against Charles's world. Marcus wasn't the kid from the projects anymore, and Emily wasn't the tycoon's daughter. They were proof that people like them could rewrite the rules. Fairfax felt it too. The governor caught wind of Marcus's story and funneled money into STEM programs for underserved kids across Virginia, calling it the Jackson Initiative. I'm telling you, seeing Marcus's name on a state program, that was the moment I knew he'd built something bigger than himself, something that outlasts Charles's lies. But the kicker? Old Joe, the groundskeeper who'd slipped Marcus that note at the gala, showed up at Diane's cooperative one day. He'd been Charles's eyes and ears for years, quiet as a shadow, but he'd hated how Charles treated workers like him. "I saw you save that girl," Joe told Marcus, handing him a worn photo of his own son, a coder who died young. "You reminded me of him. That's why I helped." That photo, tucked in Marcus's wallet, was like a talisman, a reminder that every step he took was for more than just himself. I'm telling you, this wasn't just about Charles's fall or Marcus's rise. It was about a town, a family, a girl in a wheelchair, all finding their way out of the dark because one kid refused to stay in his place.
I'm telling you, 3 years after Marcus Jackson turned Charles Harper's world upside down, Fairfax, Virginia wasn't just a town anymore. It was a story, one that people across the country were still talking about. Picture this. It's spring 2028, and Marcus is standing on a stage at Georgetown University, cap and gown crisp, his mom Diane in the front row, her eyes shining like she's holding back a river. Marcus, now 19, is graduating with honors in computer science, and he's about to give the commencement speech to a sea of faces, some who'd never have bet on a kid from Alexandria's projects making it this far. I swear, the air felt electric, like everyone knew they were witnessing something bigger than a graduation. Marcus steps to the mic, his voice steady, not loud, but the kind that makes you lean in. "They told me my place was small back when I was just the janitor's kid," he says, pausing as the crowd hangs on every word. "But I learned your obstacles are your blueprint. Build with them, not against them." It wasn't some preachy lecture. It was raw, like he was talking to a friend over coffee, and the applause hit like thunder. Diane, clutching a tissue, looked like she was seeing her late husband's fight in her son, that same stubborn grit that built their old house brick by brick. I could feel her pride, like it was heavy enough to anchor the whole room. Meanwhile, Charles Harper, he's a ghost of his old self, rotting in a federal prison an hour from Fairfax. I got my hands on a page from his journal, and let me tell you, it's not what you'd expect. "I thought power was money, control, a name," he wrote, his handwriting shaky. "Then a kid with a busted laptop tore it all down. I didn't just lose my empire, I lost my daughter, my pride." Reading that, I felt a twinge of pity, but only a twinge. Charles's regret wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, like a man staring at the wreckage of his own arrogance, knowing he'd built it himself. His ex-wife Ellen had moved to California, starting fresh. But Emily, she was thriving. At 17, she was a freshman at Virginia Tech, studying engineering and speaking at a TEDx event about accessible tech. "Marcus didn't just save my life," she told the crowd, her voice clear over a live stream. "He showed me I could build one. She was working on that app for disabled athletes, the one she and Marcus started in Fairfax, now funded by a national grant. I'm telling you, seeing Emily roll onto that stage, her chin high, was like watching a phoenix rise. But what really gets me is how Marcus's story didn't just change him or Emily, it changed everything. Fairfax named a scholarship after him, the Marcus Jackson Fund, sending kids from rough neighborhoods to STEM programs across Virginia. Schools from Richmond to D.C. started teaching his story in ethics classes, how a teenager used code to expose corruption. Sarah Coleman, that journalist who broke the Harper story, was now a household name, her Pulitzer-nominated articles sparking a national conversation about workplace fairness. She'd turned her Fairfax boot camp into a nonprofit, training teens to chase truth like she did with Marcus. He was my spark, she'd say, her voice cracking at a fundraiser, and you could see kids in the room dreaming bigger because of it. Miss Laura Bennett, Marcus's old teacher, was running the Fairfax High Coding Club, now called Code for Change, with kids building apps to help local shelters. Even old Joe, the groundskeeper who slipped Marcus that note, was part of it. He'd retired but volunteered at Diane's cleaning cooperative, telling stories about his coder son, the one who inspired him to help Marcus. That photo of Joe's son, Marcus kept it in his wallet, a reminder that every fight was for more than just himself. What I didn't expect was the ripple effect. The Governor's Jackson Initiative, that STEM program Marcus inspired, was now in 10 states, with tech companies matching funds to get laptops to kids who'd never had one. Fairfax's community center, where Emily swam and Marcus mentored, had a new wing with his name on it, packed with teens learning to code. I saw Marcus there one day, showing a shy kid how to debug a line, his old laptop, cracked screen and all, sitting in a glass case nearby, labeled The Blueprint. It was like a monument to what one person could do. Diane, running her cooperative, was training women to lead, her voice steady as she told them, "My son showed me we don't wait for permission." The town that once cheered Charles's galas now rallied around Marcus's legacy, with murals of him and Emily popping up on local businesses, one with the words, "Build your blueprint." I'm telling you, it wasn't just a happy ending, it was a beginning. Marcus wasn't chasing fame, he was chasing a world where kids like him didn't have to prove their worth. As he left the stage at Georgetown, a kid in the crowd yelled, "Yo, Marcus, you're a legend!" He just smiled, that same quiet smirk from the gala night, and I knew he was already planning his next move. This wasn't the end of Marcus Jackson's story, it was the start of something America wouldn't forget. The story of Marcus Jackson teaches us that true worth isn't measured by where you start, but by the courage you summon to rise above injustice. In a world quick to judge based on race, class, or circumstance, Marcus showed us that resilience and integrity can shatter even the tallest walls of prejudice. His journey from a humiliated teenager to a beacon of change reminds us that every obstacle is a chance to build something greater, a blueprint for a better self and a fairer world. For those of us who felt dismissed or silenced, this story whispers a truth. You don't need permission to prove your value. As the American saying goes, you can't judge a book by its cover. Yet too often, we let stereotypes blind us to potential. Marcus's fight urges us to confront toxic biases, whether in ourselves or others, and to amplify voices that deserve to be heard. It's about choosing action over apathy, like Marcus did when he dove into that pool, or when he exposed Charles Harper's lies. For Vietnamese audiences, young and old, this resonates deeply. In a society where respect and dignity are cherished, we can all learn to stand tall, to rebuild after being torn down, and to see the strength in those society overlooks. So, what's your take on Marcus's story? Have you faced a moment where you had to prove your worth against the odds? Drop a comment below, share your thoughts or your own story. Hit that like button to show some love, and subscribe to catch more stories that inspire and challenge us to grow. Here's to finding peace after the storm and hope in every new beginning.